Hello, everyone. I'm Christopher Manfredi, Provost and Vice Principal Academic of McGill University. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to our very special event, the inauguration of the Dr. Charles R. Drew Graduate Fellowships at McGill. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that McGill University is on land which long served as a site of meeting and exchange amongst Indigenous peoples, including the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe nations. We acknowledge and thank the diverse Indigenous people whose footsteps have marked this territory on which peoples of the world now gather. And acknowledging that fact is important after the very tragic facts we all learned last week. As we celebrate this occasion, we are fortunate to be joined by members of Dr. Drew's family, including his doctor, Dr. Charlene Drew Jarvis, who's been a key partner with us in the development of the fellowships named in her father's honor and in this event today. We're also delighted to welcome many distinguished guests from McGill and fellow universities, both in Canada and the United States, as well as leaders from the healthcare sector and government. I would like to recognize the following officials who are joining us from various levels of government. The Honorable Mark Miller, MP for Ville-Marie de Sud-Ouest Île-des-Sœurs and Minister of Indigenous Services. Mr. Benoit Charette, député de Deux-Montagnes, ministre de l'Environnement et de la lutte contre les changements climatiques, ministre responsable de la lutte contre le racisme. Ms. Nadine Giraud, députée de Bertrand, ministre des Relations internationales et de la francophonie, ministre de l'Immigration, de la francisation et de l'intégration. Ms. Jennifer Macaron, députée de Westmount Saint-Louis. Ms. Kathy Wong, conseillère de la ville responsable de la diversité, de l'inclusion en emploi, de la langue française et de la lutte au racisme et à la discrimination. Ms. Bokra Manaï, la première commissaire à la lutte au racisme et à la discrimination systémique à la ville de Montréal. And Ms. Marlene Jennings, President of the Quebec Community Groups Network and first Black parliamentarian from Quebec. Thank you all for being here. The idea for the Dr. Charles Drew Fellowships was sparked by a meeting I had with Dr. Wayne Frederick, President of Howard University, and Dr. Anthony Wuto, Howard's Provost and Chief Academic Officer, both of whom are with us today. From those initial discussions, the vision for the fellowships evolved further, and it's wonderful to see our efforts come to fruition today, which is also, of course, Dr. Drew's birthday. This initiative is very meaningful to the McGill community as it advances the commitments set forth in our action plan to address anti-Black racism. Through these fellowships, McGill will be able to attract more talented Black students to its campuses and support them in their graduate school ambitions, build relationships with the network of historically Black colleges and universities, and of course, honor one of our most accomplished alumni, Dr. Charles Drew, and his enduring impact on society. I could share more about Dr. Charles Drew's pioneering work in the field of blood banking and the remarkable fortitude and integrity that he demonstrated throughout his life, but perhaps it would be best to show you through video.
Excellence of performance will overcome any artificial barriers created by man. This was the mantra of Dr. Charles Richard Drew, the father of blood banking, and they are the words that he lived by.
As an African American living during a time of racial segregation in the United States, Drew overcame these barriers repeatedly. His options to study medicine were limited. He was offered deferred admission to Harvard, but chose to pursue his studies at McGill. The prize-winning student earned a place in the Alpha Omega Alpha Honor Society and graduated second in his class in 1933.
At McGill, Professor John Beatty sparked Drew's curiosity about blood transfusions and started him on the path toward a major medical breakthrough. After his residency in Montreal, he joined the faculty of Howard University's College of Medicine and later won a Rockefeller Fellowship to study at Columbia University.
At Columbia, Drew discovered blood plasma was easier to transport and could be stored longer than whole blood, two crucial advantages for emergencies. In 1940, he became the first African American to earn a Doctor of Medical Science degree from Columbia. Shortly afterwards, he became the medical director of the Blood for Britain campaign. There, he oversaw the collection and shipment of blood plasma to injured soldiers and civilians in World War II. Drew introduced new techniques for storing and distributing plasma, which became standard practice.
In 1941, he was appointed to create a pilot for a national system of blood banks. Again, he pioneered innovations such as refrigerated mobile collection units. But his tenure was short-lived. When the U.S. Army asked that the blood of African American donors be segregated from white donors, Drew resigned in protest, describing the practice as indefensible.
He returned to Howard as a professor of medicine and chief surgeon at Freedman's Hospital. At the age of 39, he shattered barriers again, becoming the first African American examiner for the American Board of Surgery. That same year, he swept Lenore Robbins, an instructor at Spelman College, off her feet. The couple married and had 4 beloved children together. In recognition of his outstanding work, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People awarded Drew the Spingard Medal, its highest honor.
In 1950, tragedy struck suddenly. On his way to a convention, Drew was unable to find a hotel open to African Americans in North Carolina. He fell asleep at the wheel and suffered a fatal automobile accident.
Though his life was cut short, Dr. Charles Drew's legacy endures as a trailblazer. His work in the collection and storage of plasma has impacted millions of lives. Over the years, schools, health clinics, medical societies, and even a naval vessel have been named to commemorate his transformative role in the history of medicine.
And now, through the Dr. Charles R. Drew Graduate Fellowships, McGill honors Dr. Drew's legacy, perseverance, and commitment to excellence that he so boldly reflected throughout his life.
I hope you all enjoyed that, and I want to thank those who put it together and thank our narrators, of course. It's now my pleasure to invite Professor Suzanne Fortier, Principal and Vice Chancellor of McGill University, to share a few words.
Merci, Chris. Bonjour et bienvenue à vous tous, and thank you so much for being with us for this very exceptional event, the inauguration of the Dr. Charles R. Drew Graduate Fellowships at McGill University. It is really a privilege to have so many of you coming from different areas. Many esteemed guests joining us this morning, and I believe that the number of people attending here from this sector is really a testament to the remarkable legacy of Dr. Charles Drew, as we've seen in the video, and to our collective commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion. These are important values for us at McGill, for all of us who are here. They're critically important to our university, and the fellowship that is honoring Dr. Drew seek to advance those very important values. As you've seen, despite the many systemic barriers of his time, Dr. Drew found at McGill an environment in which he could thrive, and he did. At our university, as you've seen, he distinguished himself through his academic excellence in medicine, his growing curiosity in blood storage, and through his remarkable athletic performance in track and field. In fact, he broke records and had many victories in his sport along the way. Our aim in creating this fellowship is to replicate these opportunities for promising Black students from historically Black colleges and universities. We want to spotlight their excellence and nurture their path in academia and in many other fields. It's wonderful that we can welcome our inaugural recipient of the Dr. Charles R. Drew Graduate Fellowship, Asia Blackman, who is graduating from Howard University, and at McGill, she'll be pursuing her master's in epidemiology. So congratulations, Asia, and we welcome you warmly to our university. We're really eager to have you with us, and it looks like it will be in person. So this is great. We are, of course, thrilled to have members of Dr. Drew's family. And in a few minutes, we will have a conversation among students and a conversation with Dr. Charlene Drew Jarvis, Charles Drew's daughter, and an inspiration herself. So I think we all look forward to that conversation. It will be an inspiring discussion, I'm certain. And again, merci à vous tous d'être ici avec nous pour honorer la vie du Dr. Charles R. Drew et pour célébrer une très belle initiative. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Principal Fortier. I'd now like to welcome Dr. Wayne Frederick, President and Distinguished Charles R. Drew Professor of Surgery at Howard University.
Thanks very much for the invitation. This is an absolutely auspicious occasion. I'm certainly excited about the creation of the Dr. Charles R. Drew Graduate Fellowships, which continues to further the connection between HBCUs here in the US and McGill University. The reality is that both Howard and McGill have been a haven for Black Americans who could not attend other primarily white institutions. And so today we're celebrating the beginning of a new bond between Howard and McGill. But we would be remiss to overlook the historic connection between McGill and Black institutions of higher education. While primarily white American colleges and universities were so often inhospitable environments for African-American men and women, HBCUs and Canadian institutions like McGill proved to be an oasis of opportunity for people who were barred and denied access simply because of the color of their skin. That intolerance led Charles R. Drew to McGill and subsequently to Howard University in order to test the reach of his talents. And as you saw and heard in the video, he was a man of principle, walking away when he felt that an institution that was so important to the lives of so many Americans would not do the right thing. As Charles R. Drew famously said, excellence of performance will transcend artificial barriers created by man. And that excellence of performance is what we are about today. Dr. Drew certainly rode the waves of his own excellence to heights that no Black man had ever reached before. But he was only able to do so because he was given an initial opportunity. And I think that that's extremely important. The significance of his pioneering work to store blood still today goes on. And I myself, as a sufferer of sickle cell, I'm indebted to the work that he's done. While I have never had a blood transfusion in my life, the fact of the matter is that if I needed one, his work certainly has made it possible for me to have one. In July of 2020, Howard University's Board of Trustees made a decision to name me the Charles R. Drew Professor of Surgery. It is the single highest honor of my career and the most humbling of them all. Because more than anything else, I feel obliged to live up to his legacy of excellence as a surgeon and as president of Howard University. He was a man of relentless spirit, someone who was available, was consistently about raising the bar of excellence, but had a very common touch. And so a critical part of my job at Howard is to provide students with opportunity when they could not have that opportunity anywhere else. And so I'm immensely grateful that McGill shares in that vision by supporting historically Black college and university students. And with this opportunity to pursue graduate work and uphold the impressive and inspiring legacy of Charles R. Drew, I am confident that these students will generate breakthroughs of their own. So again, I want to thank McGill. I want to acknowledge the presence of Dr. Charlene Drew Jarvis, who again continues to move the legacy of Charles R. Drew forward, but in her own right, has impacted higher education and our community here in Washington, D.C. in so many ways. And so I look forward to the connection. I look forward to visiting as well. And as I have continued to study the life of Charles R. Drew, I recognize that McGill was probably the perfect platform for him to give the wings to the breadth of his talents. And for that, the world remains indebted to McGill. And I think this is a fitting honor to not just name the graduate fellowships after him, but to give opportunity to those who have come behind him in the way that you did so in giving him the opportunity. So thanks again, and my pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much, Dr. Frederick. I'd now like to ask Dr. Anthony Wuto, Provost and Chief Academic Officer at Howard University, to say a few words.
It's certainly an honor and a pleasure for me to be able to join and participate in this wonderful occasion. As you saw from the video, Dr. Charles Drew was a distinguished faculty member, a legendary surgeon here at Howard University, and a mentor to generations of physicians and surgeons who continue to revere his name. I can really think of few higher honors given his commitment to excellence and his commitment to education, that the honor that you are bestowing upon him in naming a fellowship and providing the opportunity to students from HBCUs to be able to participate as Charles Drew Fellows really is befitting the legend and befitting the contributions that Dr. Drew made, not only here at Howard, but certainly has impacted the lives of people all over the world. I want to congratulate Asia Blackman as the inaugural Charles Drew Fellow, and certainly thank McGill, his alma mater, for sharing him with Howard and for providing the formative education that really helped to propel and distinguish his career and set the foundation for the accomplishments that he would later achieve. Certainly, we at Howard continue to revere Dr. Drew, and students who have come decades after his unfortunate passing continue to know who he is, the contributions that he made, and the high honor that we continue to place in his name. So I'm proud to be a part of this event. We are proud to continue to be a part of his legacy, and we look forward to continue to partner and contribute with McGill in moving this fellowship forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wuto. Let me now call upon the Honorable Mark Miller for some remarks.
Thank you, Chris, and a pleasure to be here. Il me fait plaisir d'être avec vous virtuellement aujourd'hui pour cette mise en œuvre du plan de la lutte contre le racisme anti-noir de l'Université McGill et la création de bourses de recherche au cycle supérieur pour rendre hommage au Dr. Charles Richard Drew. Dr. Charles Richard Drew, as you've all spoken so eloquently about, was the father of blood banking, and among McGill's most illustrious alumni, his work on the collection and storage of blood products has saved millions of lives. Les bourses de recherche établies en son honneur viendront consolider le lien qui depuis longtemps unit deux des universités qui ont façonné sa noble carrière et son apport à notre monde. Évidemment, la Howard University, où il était membre de la faculté de médecine, et McGill. These fellowships, as you've mentioned, will be awarded to McGill University graduates of Howard University and other accredited HBCU institutions who have been admitted to McGill to pursue a master's or doctoral program, and whose record reflects the values that Dr. Drew promoted throughout his lifetime: academic excellence, perseverance in the face of adversity, leadership, and a commitment to justice. To those, the fellowship holders, the future fellowship holders, I wish you the absolute best of luck. And I'll finish this speech on a personal note. I'm now the fourth generation of people in my family that have attended McGill. They first male in that lineage, in that particular lineage, the three women that were trailblazers attended before me in three successive generations, but they look like me. I'm the fifth generation will be my son, who is accepted at the Faculty of Music after a year at the Conservatoire. And I end this on a personal note because he himself is the father of a racialized child of Haitian descent. And The work that the fellowship holders are doing today will continue to blaze trails, which remain to be done. And I've always looked at immense curiosity, intellectual fascination, and admiration on the work that Howard University has done. And I frankly didn't know the tight links that existed between McGill and Howard. And so that the work continues. And it's sometimes selfish to express personal notes, so I'm deeply aware of that, but I am personally very grateful for the work of the people on this call. This is the first time I've spoken publicly about it, and I really am so deeply and profoundly touched by the work that you will continue to do, and the fellowship holders, most importantly, for the further generations, will continue to do and continue to blazing trails. Merci.
Chers dignitaires, chères étudiantes et étudiants, mesdames et messieurs, nous sommes réunis aujourd'hui pour officialiser le lancement par l'Université McGill des bourses de recherche au cycle supérieur Dr. Charles Richard Drew. Cette très belle initiative est d'abord un hommage à ce dernier qui fut une personnalité scientifique de renom, qui est considéré comme le père des banques de sang, mais également son combat contre la ségrégation raciale relativement au don de sang. On a peine à imaginer ce que nous ferions aujourd'hui sans les possibilités extraordinaires offertes par la conservation des produits sanguins. Ces techniques qui font partie du quotidien dans le domaine de la santé et ont permis de sauver des millions de vies ont été perfectionnées par ce chirurgien afro-américain dont le nom et la mémoire seront perpétués à travers les bourses d'excellence que nous inaugurons aujourd'hui. Les travaux du Dr. Drew lui valent d'être considéré par beaucoup comme le père de la banque de sang, un des plus grands savants du 20e siècle. Sa contribution à l'avancement de la science au bénéfice de la santé des populations du monde entier se doit d'être davantage connue, ce que permet notamment la création de ces bourses. Ce grand scientifique qui a fait une partie de ses études à la faculté de médecine de l'Université McGill est une source d'inspiration pour les jeunes femmes et jeunes hommes qui font de la recherche, dont ceux issus des communautés noires et plus largement pour toute la société québécoise. Les valeurs d'excellence universitaire, de persévérance et de justice qui ont été portées par le Dr. Charles Richard Drew sont celles qui seront décelées chez les futurs lauréats et lauréates de ces bourses. Les jeunes générations d'étudiantes, d'étudiants et de chercheurs dont le parcours académique et personnel sera récompensé par ces prix trouveront certainement en cette personnalité remarquable un modèle afin de poursuivre avec détermination et succès leurs études de maîtrise ou de doctorat. Je voudrais donc féliciter l'Université McGill d'avoir su créer une telle opportunité pour les étudiantes et étudiants et souligner la contribution positive de cette initiative à la construction d'une société plus inclusive, exempte de racisme, une mission qui me tient à cœur et nous réunit. Je vous remercie.
Bonjour. C'est un grand honneur pour moi de participer au lancement des bourses d'études supérieures portant le nom du célèbre médecin Charles Drew. Je remercie d'ailleurs l'Université McGill de l'invitation. Le Dr. Charles Drew s'est fait connaître pour ses travaux visant la collecte de plasma sanguin à grande échelle. Ces travaux ont d'ailleurs mené à la création de la première banque de sang de la Croix-Rouge américaine. Grâce à ces travaux, de nombreuses vies ont pu être sauvées lors de la Seconde Guerre mondiale et le sont encore de nos jours. Les bourses Charles Drew sont à l'image de cet homme, puisqu'elles permettront à de nombreux étudiants des communautés noires d'exprimer leurs talents, de s'épanouir dans leur vie professionnelle et personnelle et de contribuer pleinement à la société québécoise. La création des bourses Charles Drew s'inscrit dans les objectifs poursuivis par le groupe d'action contre le racisme que j'ai eu le privilège de coprésider. Le rapport s'intitulait « Le racisme au Québec, tolérance zéro » pour indiquer clairement notre préoccupation première, le rejet par la société québécoise de toute forme de racisme. Le gouvernement du Québec a entrepris avec détermination la mise en place du plan d'action issu des travaux pour une société sans racisme, à commencer par la nomination d'un ministre responsable de la lutte contre le racisme, mon collègue Benoît Charette. De nombreuses mesures prévues au rapport permettront d'agir contre le racisme et la discrimination dans 6 domaines, dans le but de mettre fin à la discrimination policière, lutter contre le racisme dans l'accès au logement, combattre le racisme dans le domaine de l'emploi, informer la population québécoise sur la réalité du racisme, miser sur l'éducation des jeunes pour combattre le racisme et finalement, s'appuyer sur l'exemplarité de l'État en matière de lutte contre le racisme. Les personnes des communautés noires représentent environ 2,5% de la population québécoise, soit quelques 200 000 personnes. De ce nombre, la moitié est née au Québec et le quart y est établi depuis plusieurs générations. L'autre moitié provient de l'immigration. Le lancement des bourses Charles Drew nous offre l'occasion de réaffirmer les valeurs d'égalité et de solidarité qui animent les Québécoises et Québécois de toutes les origines. Réaffirmons également l'importance de la pleine participation de toutes et de tous à la vie collective. Ce sont les valeurs essentielles à l'édification d'un monde de paix dans nos sociétés de plus en plus diversifiées. Merci et bonne continuation.
Let me now call upon Ms. Jennifer Macaron to say some words for us.
Good morning, everybody. Also a pleasure for me to be with you. Vraiment un grand plaisir que je m'adresse à vous dans le cadre du lancement des bourses de recherche au cycle supérieur de Dr. Charles R. Drew. Listening to all of you speak, it's clear that throughout his life, Dr. Drew stood not only for academic excellence, but for perseverance, for leadership, and for justice. And the field of blood transfusion certainly helps to develop better techniques for blood storage. Set up the world's first large-scale blood banks and has certainly helped to save thousands and thousands of lives from the Second World War and onward. So we all know what we've heard is that he's a man of principle and determination. He resigned from his position at the American Red Cross to protest the practice of racial segregation in the donation of blood. He was a trailblazer. His career is really most inspiring. And of course, I'm pleased that McGill University has decided to honor such an eminent alumnus as part of its 2020 action plan to address anti-Black racism. We all have a role to play in tackling discrimination and inequality and in supporting graduate students of historically Black colleges and universities to pursue graduate work in one of its faculties. McGill is taking concrete actions to achieve its goal of a diverse student body. And that's really important because diversity is so much more than just a buzzword. It leads to new ideas, to further discussions, and it drives innovation. And it's by strengthening relationships with universities like Howard University and the HBCUs, McGill is asserting its role and continues to assert its role as a world-class university. Les bourses de recherche au cycle supérieur inciteront des chercheurs et des chercheurs mondiales à s'établir au cœur de notre métropole. Et je suis convaincue que les travaux de leurs titulaires contribueront au rayonnement du Québec sur la scène internationale, qui est très important. C'est depuis maintenant 200 ans que l'Université McGill est une référence en matière d'éducation et de recherche. Son apport à la Société québécoise de la circonscription, oui, est inestimable. Et vous ne pouvez pas savoir comment je suis fière qu'un établissement aussi avant-gardiste se trouve au cœur de la circonscription dont je représente à l'Assemblée nationale. So, bravo. I know that it's a very big moment. I'm incredibly proud to be your M&A, and you have all of my admiration. So congratulations to everybody.
Thank you, Ms. Macaron. Let me call upon Ms. Kathy Wong, City Councilor.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Sorry, I was trying to actually put my daughter to sleep and it was a little bit challenging, so she's in my arms right now. Alors, bonjour tout le monde, et puis un grand plaisir. Merci beaucoup pour l'invitation, pour ce grand moment très important, non seulement pour la communauté universitaire, mais également pour notre ville. Professeur, Madame Suzanne Fortier, un plaisir de vous revoir. Dr. Wayne Frederick, l'honorable Mac Miller, ma chère collègue de l'Assemblée nationale, Jennifer Macaron, chers invités. En fait, c'est un plaisir pour moi. C'est une excellente nouvelle de l'Université McGill, mais également pour toute la collectivité montréalaise. Je pense que la richesse de notre métropole doit s'appuyer sur les diversités des individus qui la composent. Et puis, c'est la multiplicité de ces parcours de vie et des cultures qui va cultiver cette ouverture, la curiosité, qui va contribuer à notre créativité montréalaise et surtout à la résilience de Montréal. Donc, je suis très heureuse d'être ici pour la création de cette bourse, d'attirer des étudiants diplômés qui vont permettre de reconnaître davantage d'étudiants noirs et de poursuivre une maîtrise et un doctorat à l'Université McGill. C'est une initiative extrêmement importante, structurante dans la lutte contre le racisme anti-noir à l'université et qui aura des impacts dans toute la communauté montréalaise. And as a former McGill student in poli-sci, but also as a person of color, a new mom, I know how education is so powerful for the development of a more just and inclusive society. Removing barriers to access higher education is needed to fight against systemic racism. And I personally remember my own parents telling me, raising me, and telling me that, life will not be that easy for people of color and that we have to work harder, study harder than other students. And of course, in their mentality and in their generation, it was something that was extremely important, but especially studying harder than others was definitely something that they were constantly reminding us. And today, I aspire, to live in a society where, as a parent of color, I won't have to say that to my children. I won't have to tell them that they have to study harder than their white or non-color students and friends, because we will be living in a society where students from all different backgrounds will be able to access financially and access universities and institutions. So I'm really proud as a Montrealer that we can work together and that we can look into better access to institutions. Et très fière que Montréal pourra compter sur une institution comme l'Université McGill pour jouer un rôle de leadership dans la lutte contre le racisme systémique. Et très fière surtout de pouvoir, comme ancienne étudiante de l'Université McGill, d'être ici avec vous aujourd'hui et de souligner l'héritage extrêmement important de M. Drew et d'être avec vous pour le souligner. Merci beaucoup, and thank you for all of your work, and this is a fantastic initiative. Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wong. Let me call on Dr. Edouard Guassi, Associate Professor in the Department of Medicine and Medical Specialties at the Université de Montréal.
Thank you very much. I want to tell you on behalf of the Quebec Black Medical Association, QBMA, how much I am honored and privileged, I feel privileged to be part of this event today. I would like to highlight a few examples of what we are doing in honor of Dr. Drew. First of all, on a personal note, I want to mention that part of my own research work at Université de Montréal is in the field of blood banking. And we have obtained recently a US patent on novel methods and compounds to increase the survival of red blood cells during their storage in blood banks. So this is directly in relation with Dr. Drew's extraordinary work. Doing this research, we continue to realize the relevance of Dr. Drew's mantra, as we heard in the video today and repeated by many other speakers before me. Excellence performance will overcome any artificial barriers created by man. So I want to move to what QBMA and QBMA members are doing to honor Dr. Drew's legacy. Over the years, some of the QBMA members have observed that the number of students in medical schools are declining in Montreal University. And they have set a program to help Black students to gain access to medical schools. and they call this group was called the Society, the Charles Drew Society of Canada, and some of our current PBM members were also members of the Charles Drew Society of Canada. So the other example I want to mention is what the Black Community Resource Center is doing. The Black Community Resource Center is a big organization of Black people here in Montreal, and PBM is a member organization of the BCRC. And BCRC holds every year a blood drive in collaboration with EMA Quebec. And these projects arose from the fact that there are a shortage of blood donors in the Black community. So what BCRC is doing with EMA Quebec is very, very important in terms of increasing chances for people with many disorders, kidney disorders, sickle cell anemia, for example, to have appropriate treatment. So the last and not the least example is what one of our young members is doing. Her name is Stephanie Boomba, and Stephanie is with us today. She is a clinician nurse, and she has produced a number of videos to celebrate the memory of Black scientists from past to present. And guess who is the first Black scientist he has honored? Dr. Drew. So I want to finish by thanking you again for inviting us today. And the example that I have just mentioned are to show you how we support the initiative of McGill to honor Dr. Drew's work in the field of blood banking. And I want to wish long live the Dr. Drew Fellowship Program at the McGill University. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kouassi. Let me turn now to Dr. Nancy Robitaille, Vice President of Transfusional Medicine at EMA Quebec.
Bonjour, c'est un honneur et un privilège pour EMA Québec d'être présent aujourd'hui afin de reconnaître la contribution extraordinaire du Dr. Charles Drew. Charles Drew was more than an honor student at McGill University's Faculty of Medicine. His research in the field of blood transfusion improved techniques for blood storage and led to large-scale blood banks early in World War II. His technique for the storage of blood components revolutionized the medical profession. His work was an important milestone in what has since become the blood system as we know it. Awarded the Rockefeller Fellowship in Surgery in 1938, Dr. Drew wrote a doctoral thesis entitled Bank Blood. During his research, he discovered that by separating plasma, the liquid part of blood, from the red blood cells and refrigerating them separately, blood lasted longer and was less likely to become tainted by bacterial contamination. He was gifted and brilliant and used his talent, his intelligence, and his exceptional skills for the greater good. However, his remarkable contribution was made in troubled time. Dr. Drew lived in an era where the color of your skin was an open and direct source of discrimination and exclusion. Dr. Drew attempted to bring changes to a totally unacceptable situation. He asked the War Department to stop the open segregation of plasma supply networks in the US Army. In protest, he resigned from his position when the authorities decided not to change a policy stating that African American blood should be kept separate from the blood of white American. Throughout his short, though fulfilled lifetime, Dr. Drew brought a deeper sense to the value of excellence, perseverance in the face of adversity, leadership, and commitment to justice. In this regard, Dr. Charles Drew's contribution and actions are to be remembered. Since 2012, Quebec has held, in partnership with organizations within Montreal's Black communities, the annual Dr. Charles Drew Blood Drive. It is a reminder that first and foremost, the blood supplies belongs to all human beings. It is a noble cause and above any consideration, regardless of race or skin color. Today, McGill University is contributing to keep the legacy of an exceptional man alive with the creation of the Dr. Charles R. Drew Graduate Fellowship. En conclusion, j'aimerais souligner et féliciter Madame Asia Blackman, première récipiendaire de la bourse. Merci.
Merci, Dr. Robitaille. And now let me turn to Dr. Anita Brown-Johnson, Assistant Professor and Chief of Family Medicine at the McGill University Health Center.
Bonjour, good day, esteemed colleagues, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for each and every one for your presence here today. I wish to specifically acknowledge and welcome Dr. Charlene Drew Jarvis, daughter of Dr. Charles Drew. It is my profound honor to join you for the launch of this most important and prestigious award, the Dr. Charles Drew Postgraduate Fellowships at McGill University. Today underscores the significance of knowing our history. The contributions of Dr. Drew to medicine are too numerous to share with any brevity, as you must have surely gathered through the video montage. From the harsh, chaotic environments of the battlefields of World War II to the streamlined state-of-the-art operating suites and emergency rooms that exist today, Dr. Drew's pioneering contributions to the field of medicine and to the expanses of science have saved the lives of persons of every color and every creed across the planet and have fostered ongoing research in the field of blood transfusion and blood banking. And yet, this was merely the preface to his life story. It behooves us to acknowledge that his rise to success was not without obstacles, the greatest of which was the fact that he was a Black man whose skin tone posed barriers to access to medical schools and to patients in the United States. Suffice it to say that it was at McGill University Faculty of Medicine, reputed for the recruitment and better treatment of minorities, that he was able to flourish as a star athlete, student, intern, and surgical resident. As you have already heard, Dr. Drew remained true to his values, even at great cost, promptly resigning from his position as director of the American Red Cross when ordered to separate white people's blood from Black people's blood. Years later, he made a statement recognizing that anti-racism was a major impediment preventing the advancement of bright Black minds. He encouraged all students, regardless of skin color, to strive to create innovative ideas with the following powerful and uplifting words. So much of our energy is spent in overcoming the constricting environment in which we live that little energy is left for creating new things or ideas. Whenever, however, one breaks out of this high-walled prison of the Negro problem by virtue of some worthwhile contribution, not only is he himself allowed more freedom, but part of the wall crumbles. And so it should be the aim of every student in science to knock down at least one or two bricks of that wall by virtue of his own accomplishment. Throughout his life, Dr. Drew exhibited an uncanny ability to rise above disappointments and discover opportunities. He led by example, transcending barriers from the football fields to laboratories, to the clinical milieu, and in academia. By his own words, Dr. Drew called to action inclusively all students of science to break down barriers as they pursue their passions to discover, to innovate, and to achieve. In so doing, this man of many firsts ensured he would not be the last. This award, thus, could not be more aptly named. And with the current heightened global awareness of the importance of embracing equity, diversity, and inclusion, it justly honors the legacy and contributions of Dr. Drew, not only to the saving of lives, but to the inspiring of great future scientists who embrace these very values and who will carry them forward in the spirit of his worldview and in the embodiment of his self-proclaimed most important legacy, excellence in medical and surgical education. In our engagements on anti-Black racism, the Dr. Kenneth Melville McGill Black Faculty and Staff Caucus seeks to honor the legacy of Dr. Drew and other prominent Black pathfinders whose destinies were intertwined with both McGill and with local transnational Black communities. As a caucus, we worked to cultivate relationships of mutuality, characterized by sustained consultation, community accountability, and respect. As a proud alumnus and member of the Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences, it is humbling and heartening to be witness to this recognition of one of the most important scientists of the 20th century. Today is a wonderful beginning, reminiscent of the art of healing. And tomorrow, let us continue to amplify Dr. Drew's legacy, to embrace excellence in thought and in deed, and to knock down bricks until the wall crumbles in search of a better tomorrow, a better normal for all humanity. Merci. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brown-Johnson, for those wonderful words. Now I'm pleased to invite Mr. Antoine Samuel Mofeta-Lavo, the Black Student Affairs Liaison, to introduce Dr. Charlene Drew Jarvis and our student panel.
Hi, everyone. I'm honored to present our esteemed guest, Dr. Charlene Drew Jarvis. A graduate of Oberlin, Howard, and the University of Maryland, Dr. Drew Jarvis began her career as a neuroscientist at the National Institute of Mental Health. Alive to the needs that surfaced after the riots that followed the death of Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. Drew Jarvis ran for public office and was elected 6 times to the Council of the District of Columbia, serving between 1979 and 2000. In 1996, Dr. Drew Jarvis was appointed as president of Southeastern University, the first woman to hold this position. There, she established herself as a visionary leader. Charlene Drew Jarvis has led a sterling career in the fields of neuroscience, higher education, leadership, and politics. She's the recipient of more than 100 awards for her leadership, including honorary doctorates from Amherst College, George Washington University, and Oberlin College, and a distinguished alumni award from Howard University. McGill is most grateful for its newfound friendship with Dr. Drew Jarvis. As Black Student Affairs Liaison, my responsibility is to help Black students' voices be heard in a timely and effective manner, and hence, we thought we would have students from both Howard and McGill take part in this discussion as they have prepared questions for Dr. Drew Jarvis. As Black Student Affairs Liaison, I'm tasked with welcoming and providing support to incoming Dr. Charles R. Drew Graduate Fellows, and that's why I'm very excited that we have with us today the inaugural recipient of the Dr. Charles R. Drew Graduate Fellowship, Asia Blackman. Asia Blackman graduated Howard University with her bachelor's in chemical engineering. She was accepted to McGill University, where she will be undertaking a master's of science in epidemiology beginning in the fall. Asia, the floor is yours.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and good morning, Dr. Drew Jarvis. I just wanted to know you are the second generation of a family that has benefited from a robust education from both predominantly white institutions and HBCUs. And you've spent time on 2 of the 3 sides of academia, as student and as administrator. With all the perspective you've gained, what more do you think can be done to strengthen the relationships between HBCUs and PWIs in order to facilitate students' growth and development beyond fellowships such as this one?
Good morning, Asia and everyone. Let me first say how proud I am to be a part of this program this morning, and the fact that Dr. Frederick and McGill have partnered in the fellowship named for Dr. Drew. It is with great pride that we are with the first awardee of that this morning, and thank Angela Campbell for her just indefatigable work in bringing all of this together. Let me just say briefly to each of these questions, because I know we're running a little bit out of time, that the most important thing in partnerships between HBCUs and PWIs is relationships, is partnerships, it is shared enterprises. Those are the things that were important when I asked a couple of my colleagues who are presidents. One of them said, it would be nice if they formed long-term partnerships and encouraged their wealthy alumni to donate to HBCUs and help them strengthen their infrastructures to produce more talent. HBCUs could produce more, but for the cumulative effects of the lack of wealth over decades, a PWI and its donors could claim one academic program and make it special, from high school through the HBCU through graduate school. 100 groups of 10 Fortune thousands could claim one HBCU each, strengthen them, and solve America's talent problem in a decade. Another one of my colleagues, who is on the board of Columbia University Press, said that they had a good idea, they would publish books. But this president said, books are a good idea, but how about enriched opportunities for Black talent to enter the publishing profession and raise the flag for Black professors by engaging Howard University in a partnership? And that president said, and so did I. And President Frederick jumped on it like an Olympic athlete. He put his provost to work on the case and the game was on. It is a shared enterprise. I think those are the words that I want us all to remember. And this president said more imagination, more risk-taking, more reaching out. Solutions are there. HBUs should develop junior programs for white American undergraduates. If Black students can go to Harvard, white students can go to Howard. Faculty can go to Harvard, they can go to Spelman. It is the shared enterprise, which is the important thing. And of course, our president here, President Frederick, said collaborations such as this one are critical for the ongoing advancement of knowledge and discoveries of tomorrow's solutions. Studies continue to show that more diverse teams are more successful. The exchanges also enhance cultural competency and ensure outcomes in research. All forms of engagement should be encouraged: fellowships, student exchanges, conferences. Thank you, Asia, for that question.
Thank you, Dr. Drew Jarvis, for your answer. Our next question comes from Craig Bryan, who's graduated from medical school in his native country, Jamaica, and is currently pursuing a Master's of Science in Experimental Medicine at McGill University. He's a research trainee at the RIMUHC, where his research centers around the effects of protein kinesis on kidney injury. Craig, thank you for joining us. What's your question?
Good morning, everyone. It's truly an honor to be a part of the student panel today and to engage with you, Dr. Drew Jarvis. My question is, how did your post-secondary education and experiences shape your professional and academic life as a Black female neuroscientist and legislator? And were there any challenges you faced, and how did you overcome them?
Thank you for that question, Craig. Let me just say my Oberlin education was demanding but broadening in every way. I had come from a newly integrated public high school, which was challenging and uncomfortable. My Howard University master's degree time was challenging, nurturing, and supportive. My University of Maryland education was challenging but affirming because I had comfort in my talent. And that's something I learned at Howard University. I found my father's words at McGill in a 1929 letter to his father, which may answer your question. My father said, I started classes this morning. My class is 125 strong, and most of them look like students, very, very few of the typical college-looking fellas, and they all seem as though they are here on business. And the professors talk that way too. Still, they haven't anything on me. If I ever meant business, I mean it now. My message to you is, if you ever meant business, mean it now. Thank you for that question.
Thanks so much for sharing those particular words. Our next question is from Joshua Cabral, who is a current third-year student at Howard University College of Medicine. He's originally from the Twin Islands of Trinidad and Tobago, where he was born and raised before attending the University of Miami. He graduated cum laude from the University of Miami with degrees in both biology and economics. Joshua is pursuing a career in urology and genitourinary surgery with clinical interests including oncology, outcomes research, and healthcare disparities. Joshua, please go ahead with your question.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be part of this student panel. My question for Dr. Drew, as a student of Howard University College of Medicine, Dr. Drew is so integral to our history. So keeping along with those lines, and it's known that at the time of Dr. Drew's passing, he was never formally recognized by the American Medical Association as a physician due to him being African American. So my question for Dr. Drew Jarvis is, would you be able to speak more to the adversity that Dr. Drew had to overcome, both known and unknown to the public?
Thank you for that question, Joshua. It is not the case that Dr. Drew's medical degree was not recognized. It was indeed recognized. The problem was a little bit more broad than that because the American Medical Association would not admit African-American physicians to staffing privileges at all white hospitals. Dr. Drew wrote a letter in 1947 to Dr. Fishbein at the AMA, and he said, "You know, and I know, that it is utterly impossible for a Negro physician to become a member of a county medical society in the South," because Dr. Fishbein had said, "Go to your medical society wherever you live." And Dr. Drew is saying, "You know, it's impossible in the South." He said, "I think it would be a very simple thing, even with our segregated setup, for the Board of Trustees of the American Medical Association to initiate changes which would grant membership to qualified men in the American Medical Association without going through county societies. Your letter," my father said, "is a most unrealistic document. The American Medical Association is made up of men who honestly believe that they are members of a truly representative group of American physicians. They, I believe, would be surprised to know that a large segment of the physicians of this country who need, perhaps more than any other segment, the continuing contacts, the continuous postgraduate development, and the continuous stimulation of attendance at meetings where the learned men of the country discuss common problems and are denied such privileges on the basis of race alone. It is very, very significant that the American Medical Association apologized for stifling the careers of African Americans in 2008. But it's even more extraordinary that just this year, the American Medical Association has refuted the assumptions about Black intellect among medical professionals who are African Americans and have promised a restructuring of the entire medical delivery system. It's a 95-page document. I recommend it highly. The other antagonism that Dr. Drew had, other than the AMA, was among people who believed that blood needed to be segregated according to race. And I want to read to you some of the things which Dr. Drew said that related to that. He said, number one, "But one can say without hesitation that no differences have been shown to exist between the bloods of different races, which would in any way counterindicate the use of the blood from an individual of one race for the purpose of transfusion to individual of another race, providing bloods were the same group." He also said, and this is in 1942, "There are many white people who have been taught since infancy that Negroes are an inferior race. Only extensive education, a wise government, and an increasing fight on our part to disseminate the scientific facts can overcome this prejudice, which is founded on ignorance." He also, you can see he's not shy to speak up. He also said this with respect to the decision to segregate blood. "I think the Army made a grievous mistake, a stupid error, in first issuing an order to the effect that blood for the Army should not be received from Negroes. It was a bad mistake for three reasons. No official department of the federal government should willfully humiliate its citizens. There is no scientific basis for the order. And number three, they need the blood. I would be heartily in favor of pressure of types being brought on the Surgeon General of the US Army to force him to rescind the instructions to the American Red Cross, which demands the separation of the bloods of the donors, Such an order, I believe, would have a great salutary effect upon the morale of the Negroes than any other act which could be done at this time. I have had occasion to say this before both official and unofficial in Army circles and outside of it, but to date with no avail. And as I indicated, not until 1950 did the Red Cross leadership finally vote to discontinue marking racial designations on medical records of blood donors. And Spency Love, the person who wrote the book One Blood, said, "It is doubly and triply ironic that Charles Drew, a Black man of science, came to effectively refute some of the false beliefs that this white scientific mythology thinking led to, and that Dr. Drew's life and death then became the vehicle for a historical legend that, although also a form of racial mythology, pointed to the way to a still larger historical truth, the waste of Black lives." Thank you for that question.
Thank you for sharing the institutional obstacles faced by Dr. Drew and how he courageously fought back. So this takes us to our next student, Jared Jackson, who is a third-year medical student from Memphis, Tennessee, currently attending Howard University College of Medicine. As a third-generation Howard student, Jared is deeply familiar with the rich history of Howard and is thankful for Dr. Drew's tremendous achievements to both the institution and the world. He is planning on pursuing a career in otolaryngology, head and neck surgery. Jared?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Like Antoine said, I'm a student. I went to undergrad at Howard, and I'm a med student here at Howard as well. And as a first-year freshman, it's like a rite of passage to stay in the Charles R. Drew dorms here in Washington, D.C. So I'm deeply familiar with Charles R. Drew and thankful for y'all having me. Dr. Drew Jarvis, my question is, what were Dr. Drew's thoughts about the level of resistance that he was facing at every step? Especially considering the significant impact that his ideas had both in the country and on the world. And then do you feel like he's gotten an adequate level of recognition since? It's been a long time, since these discoveries, but do you feel like he's been recognized adequately?
Jared, thank you for that question. And the answer to that, I had picked up the letter that Charles Drew wrote to Mrs. J.F. Bates, with Dr. Anita Brown has just read to you. But let me say it once again. So much of our energy is spent in overcoming the constricting environment in which we live that little energy is left for creating new ideas or things. Whenever, however, one breaks out of this rather high-walled prison of the Negro problem, not only is he himself allowed more freedom, but part of the wall crumbles. And so it should be the aim of every student in science to knock down at least one or two bricks of that wall by virtue of his own accomplishment. But I would also read to you a note that Dr. Drew wrote to the Rosenwald Fund after he had received support. And this goes to your question about how he felt about the impact of his ideas and his training. I suppose one can never truly repay any benefactor except by carrying out successfully the program which served as a basis for the assistance. I am indebted to many people and many organizations. I shall attempt to repay them by faithfully serving to the best of my ability, the sick and the dying, the young men and women whom I have the pleasure of teaching, and the cause of medicine in making this world a place of less pain and more joy. And that was the kind of recognition that Dr. Drew wanted. Did he receive more national recognition? He is beginning to receive it now, but you remember that Dr. Drew was doing his work in the 40s. And you remember that there have been many years since in trying to make sure that the contributions of African Americans are known, but the young people on this call are going to be the people who make certain that what Dr. Drew wanted in recognition was for the work of his students to be recognized. Thank you for that question.
Thank you, Dr. Drew Jarvis, for sharing this letter, and thank you also for sharing many historical artifacts with our university archives. Our next student is Trisha Law, who is a third-year medical student at Howard University College of Medicine and an aspiring surgeon. As a first-generation immigrant from India, she looks forward to providing culturally competent care to underserved, particularly immigrant populations as a physician. Trisha, please share your question.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. It's such an honor to be in your company, Dr. Drew Jarvis. I was more curious about and wondering if you could share what kind of person Dr. Drew was and what were some of the key motivators that supported him during his journey through medical school.
Thank you for that question, Tricia. Like his father, Dr. Drew was marked by thoroughness and excellence. His mantra, of course, was excellence of performance will overcome any artificial barriers created by men. But he was also committed, goal-directed, focused, determined, demanding, ethical, warm, and generous. His initial years at McGill were challenged because of finances. His father died in 1935. It was the Depression, and he was not at all certain that he had enough dollars to finish school. And the first year that he was here, this is the 12:30 a.m. musing of Dr. Drew at January 1st, 1930. So he had just arrived here at McGill. And I'm just going to read a little bit of what he said. What a half of a new year. As the year ended, what was paying the cashier at Northeastern lunch 10 cents for tea and toast. I was cold from walking all over the city. Looking for what? I don't know. Excitement, maybe, trouble? Anything out of the ordinary, like the hordes I passed. I wished the boy at the counter a happy new year, but expressed regrets at being at that place just then. Today, I've not been hungry. I was well dressed. I'm not sick and have no great sorrow. Yet I feel poverty today as I have never felt it before. I have $1. Tonight, I wanted to join the merrymaking in some form or another so bad that my very heart ached. I couldn't go far on $1, not even alone. I'm afraid to spend it. Tomorrow I must eat, and the day after that, and many days after that. How? Who knows? I never ask favors. I took my tuxedo and suitcase to the pawn shop today. I admitted to my friends that I couldn't go to the dance because I was broke. They felt I had just overspent my allowance. Even the fellow offered to pay. But if I accept gifts without the potentiality of repaying them, I give up part of my independence. I become indebted. My independence I must maintain as long as I am not obligated to anyone in any way ever. Poverty does not make me humble. As a man, I am the equal of any man I meet. I have to lean toward no man, either fear or gratitude, and no one can make decisions for me. You will see later that it was with great attitude that he thanked the many people who had helped him. Why do I go on like I am, living harder than I ever did? I don't know. I only know I must. That is truly the measure of the man. And so Dr. Drew applied to the Rosenwald Fund to help him in his senior year. He could not have finished the senior year without support. And it's very interesting, the cost of his education and what he was asking for. Tuition at McGill was $275, and extracurricular fees were $35. 5 weeks of living at $5 a week for 25 weeks was $175. These were the costs at the time. He asked for $80,000 to $100,000 from the Rosenwald Fund. And it is significant in his application that he identified Professor J.C. Simpson, the secretary to the Faculty of Medicine at McGill University, who through personal assistance made the finishing of this year possible. So a McGill faculty member had supported him in that year. It is also significant that D.O. McLaurin, who was the head football coach at Amherst College and who moved to Brown, had continued to support Dr. Drew financially. So you see, he would not have finished without the significant support of people in his life. And there are still those people available to you students, if you ask. The Rosenwald Fund did make that award to Dr. Drew, and they wrote, "Talent and zeal had carried him through 3 years at McGill University's medical school. Money was scarce in the Drew home, and there were 3 younger children to be cared for. To earn the costs of his medical training, Charles Drew had taught biology and directed athletics at Morgan College for 2 years following his graduation from Amherst, had spent summers managing the colored swimming pools in Washington, D.C., and had added a few dollars by umpiring at basketball and football games. At 26, needing only 1 more year to complete his work at McGill, his money ran out. It was a bitter thing, after getting so close to his goal, to give up the career to which he was dedicated, or at best to delay it perhaps for years, until he could put aside enough money to go on. And jobs were hard to find, particularly for Negroes in the Depression of 1931. It was at this critical period that Charles Drew received the Rosenwald Fellowship, which enabled him to complete his education. He finished second in his class of 137, having won membership in Alpha Omega Alpha, the highest scholastic honor at McGill, the $500 Williams Prize as a result of competitive examination given to the top 5 of the graduating medical class, and the degree of Master of Surgery. By 1935, he had completed internships and residencies of hospitals in Montreal, had become a diplomate of the National Board of Medical Examiners, and was teaching at Howard University. Such is the success of a man who was helped by things like the fellowship, which is given to Asia in the name of Charles Richard Drew. Thank you for your question.
Thank you so much for sharing a slice of Dr. Drew's personal life. Our final student is LaShonda Scarrett, who's a 5th-year MD PhD candidate and Vanier Scholar in the Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences at McGill University. LaShonda's research focuses on HIV and reproductive health care delivery for marginalized populations. LaShonda, please go ahead.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's an honor to be here and to be part of this event honoring Dr. Drew. And Dr. Drew Jarvis, it's an honor and a privilege to be able to ask you this question. Part of Dr. Drew's incredible legacy is his commitment to mentorship. Dr. Drew was a mentor to many, and he trained an entire generation, really, of Black surgeons at Howard. Could you share with us what Dr. Drew's mentorship philosophy was and how he viewed his role as a mentor, particularly a mentor for Black trainees?
Thank you very much for that question. Indeed, one of Dr. Drew's accomplishments from his own perspective was the training of African-American surgeons. He trained Dr. LaSalle Lafall. Dr. LaSalle Lafall trained Dr. Wayne Frederick. That legacy is something that he would cherish. And he said to his students, "The accidental boundaries of race, religion, nationality of language do not limit the spread of disease. No such boundaries must hinder the work of the men and women anywhere in the world who would fight this worldwide enemy, disease." I would mention that when Dr. Drew's residents took their first surgery boards, Dr. Mordecai Johnson called him and said, "Charlie, you'd be glad to know that one of your students placed second on the national surgery boards. You'd be even more delighted to know that one of your students placed first." And that was an achievement for which he worked and demanded excellence from his students. I'd like to read to you finally some words of one of those residents who was Dr. Jack White. Dr. Jack White became an eminent cancer surgeon. Dr. Drew sent his residents to research centers and hospitals all over the country to bring back the very best in technique, in surgery, to students and faculty at Howard University. Dr. White had gone to Sloan Kettering to do a program and came back to Howard University and developed himself into one of the foremost cancer surgeons, and Dr. LaSalle Lafall into one of the most foremost cancer surgeons. And here you have Dr. Wayne Frederick. Let me read a number of things that Dr. White said. Dr. Charles R. Drew, the true father of surgery at Howard, was an all-American symbol, the man you wanted your son to become. He had a strong moral view of life, a sense of responsibility rare among men, and physical dynamism that was unbelievable. His intuition and instincts were so keen that he was said to have above the head of his bed a red light that went on the moment any of us working under him at the hospital made an erring step. Then Drew to the rescue and a lesson learned. He was a wise and fatherly man whose influence, though subtle, had a leavening control on his students and colleagues. In view over my desk at the hospital is a photograph of this wonderful man. Even today, when my efforts are weak, I see a severe and reproachful set of eyes looking down upon me. But when I am worthy, I see from those eyes only warm approval and joy. Dr. Drew was a great surgeon who served Howard University and the nation unselfishly. He left a line of heirs who, under his stimulation, have continued to grow and serve in his tradition. He was an enlightened dreamer who made dreams into practical reality, and he was a ruthless scholar. I commend those words to you, students. He was a ruthless scholar. Yet he possessed the capacity for warmth and depthless friendship. Perhaps Dr. Drew's greatest virtue lay in his possession of the morality that many pretend to but cannot attain. Surrounded by a nasty world, he somehow escaped and was untouched by this. His life was an outstanding example of the quality of goodness of existence man can attain. Indeed, he was the epitome of the finest in humankind. In my view, his life was evidence that God created man in his own image. In spite of this, there was no lack of warmth, no exaltation, no head above the masses. Envied by many, he was never envious. He saw the good in all men and spoke only that which he knew to be good. He was a champion of the underdog. During his youth, Drew was a superb all-around athlete. His rapid, on-the-toes, graceful strides up and down the corridors of the hospital are vital memories. The precision and orderliness of his surgical techniques matched elegantly his superbness as an athlete. His surgical talent was especially well seen in emergency situations, on which occasions his skill and judgment were matchless. He wrote, finally, "This is an evaluation of a great but simple man whom I knew by reputation before I became a medical student and by close contact from my junior year in 1942 to the time of his death in 1950. When he was alive, I felt him to be the greatest man I ever knew. And now 15 years later, after his death, and after having known well many of the most renowned men in medical fields, I am more convinced now than ever of his greatness." That was a letter from his student. That was a letter from a man who received great demands from a ruthless scholar, and yet 15 years later was able to write this letter. So I commend to you all of the faculty at Howard University and McGill University who will make those same demands of you and have the same expectations of you as people in the healthcare delivery system and in the field of medicine. And thank you again so much for the opportunity to share with you much of what I found that I thought might be relevant from Dr. Drew himself.
Thank you very much,
Thank you for
Charlene.
that question.
Thank you very much, Charlene, for sharing all of these great things about Dr. Drew, and thank you to all the students for those insightful questions and this exchange. And before I invite Dr. David Eidelman to say a few words, I just would like to acknowledge that our Chancellor, the Honorable Michael Meehan, is with us today as well. So welcome, Michael, and I'm very pleased that Chancellor Meehan could be with us today. So let me now turn it over to Dr. David Eidelman, Dean of the Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences and Vice Principal of Health Affairs at McGill University, to share a few words.
Thank you, Professor Manfredi. Au nom de la Faculté de médecine et des sciences de la santé, je suis ravi d'être ici avec vous pour inaugurer les postes de recherche au cycle supérieur, Dr. Charles R. Drew. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and especially you, Dr. Drew Jarvis, what an honor to be on the same event as you. Thank you to our student panelists. What an insightful and thought-provoking discussion. So as I just said in French, I'm delighted that we're doing this for all the reasons that people have said, but I have a special personal reason. I first heard of Charles Drew. Older people remember a TV show called MASH, and there was an episode in MASH in 1973, which dealt with racism and blood transfusions. And Charles Drew is mentioned in that episode. And that episode really struck me at the time. This was before I was in med school. And I had no idea that Charles Drew was one of our graduates. I never knew that until much later when I was a department head and we had a contest to name a new award for faculty members who would distinguish themselves in promoting diversity and excellence at the same time. And I was convinced that Dr. Charles Drew was the very person who should get that award, but I didn't win that time. But I was therefore thrilled when Provost Manfredi let me know about this new fellowship. Charles Drew is the epitome of medical excellence, an exemplar of translational medicine. He's applied scientific knowledge to better the care of patients, and he helped to transform an entire field of medicine, as we've heard. And he's had an impact on countless students, on colleagues, and everyone. His discoveries in the storage and processing of blood and his many subsequent contributions we just heard about are extraordinary in and of themselves. From the point of view of the Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences, he's clearly one of our heroes. He's certainly one of my heroes. As I said, he just exemplifies character, scientific curiosity, and determination, as Dr. Drew Jarvis just said. And through his efforts, he opened up new pathways for future scientists, surgeons, doctors, students to pursue novel questions and answers and to continue advancing our collective knowledge and work. Through this legacy, through today's event, his daughter, his family, and others powerfully reminds us that there's much left to do with respect to equity, diversity, and inclusion, but here we're able to take a small step in the right direction. One of our most successful McGill Medicine graduates of all time, he also symbolizes the close ties our faculty has had in the past years with the United States and reflects our international outlook. We're deeply indebted to him for everything he has taught us, for the way he has allowed McGill to shine in the world because of his enormous accomplishments. And we're delighted to see our traditional ties renewed this way today between McGill and HBCUs. So thank you very much for allowing me to speak. On behalf of the Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences, we're just delighted at this occasion. And we're also delighted to welcome Asia to our faculty. I think you're going to have a fabulous time in the Department of Epidemiology and Biostatistics. It sounds a bit like what Dr. Drew experienced. There's some serious scholarship there, but I'm sure you're going to shine. Thank you, everyone, and merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Dr. Eidelman. Well, that brings us to the end of our official program, which is now concluded. I want to thank everyone for speaking, for participating in the event, and for being with us today to honor the legacy of Dr. Drew and to launch this new fellowship that will strengthen these relationships between McGill, Howard University, and other HBCUs. So thank you all very much. And we look forward to welcoming more and more fellows through this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Manfredi. Thank you very much. And thank all of you again.